What's up, everybody? We are back. Betting You rolls on this week, week 10. You know the drill. Not one show, but two show. We already talked about the big time games. More importantly than that, the greasy games, the under the radar games, the requests from our beautiful community. Everyone who wanted these breakdowns has got them right here. We're about to get into these games, talk about the edges. It's also Halloween. Happy Halloween to everybody, whether you're watching it on Halloween or in the future, all that good stuff. I'm Ben Reza. Matt Kajeski joins me. More grease. A lot of middling teams on this card. I like this. What do you think?
Yeah, these are the best games, man. These are the games I love. Getting in the weeds, can talk about some Sun Belt, some AAC. Thankfully, I don't think there's any Conference USA on this list because they've all disgraced themselves during the week.
Correct.
A couple MAC games. A lot of the MAC teams are on bye, and thankfully that gives us a little bit of a respite on Tuesdays from the Conference USA nonsense we've been watching the last couple weeks.
Some bad football out there.
They should be ashamed.
Yeah, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed for them. So that's really transitive property shame, which is very dangerous. But we're going to get into it. Here we go. We're going to bring up this game realistically could have been on the first show, but Auburn is Auburn, and honestly, they don't deserve it. They have taken some money, though. I saw this at 6.5. It's now at 7, basically everywhere. You know, if you look at the teams, you're like, wait, Vanderbilt's overachieved. They've been playing fantastic. Auburn sucks, but it's down there. What do you make of this?
Auburn does suck.
They really do, but if I bet this game, I think that would be the side.
Probably me too. Everything they do wrong is self-imposed. We actually saw them cover a game in their last contest, which, would be nice if you had done that any point during the year. And yeah, Kentucky did lose like half their team in the game to injury, and Auburn still didn't look all that impressive. It was 6.6 yards per play to Kentucky's 4.1, but I don't know. Kentucky's a bit of a corpse at this point. So how much are we really taking away from it? I guess the biggest concern and pause I have betting, like a Vandy team is their defense. They do come in 61st overall, but Auburn has some pretty good underlying offensive efficiency metrics. We've been over this time and time again with the turnover-worthy plays and how unlucky Peyton Thorne's been. But whatever it is, whether it's interceptions, fumbles, it continues to happen. There are some injuries for these two teams. On offense for Auburn, Percy Lewis, their left tackle, missed their last game. On defense, there's a few guys here. They're pretty banged up in the secondary, especially Champ Anthony's been out for the year. He's their best corner. Antonio Kite and Keontae Scott both did not play on defense. Scott had some special team snaps, so that seems more like a benching. I'm not sure. And Isaiah Rakes, one of their good defensive tackles, got hurt in the game. On the other side, Vanderbilt is pretty healthy. The only guy they missed was their slot corner, Colby Taylor. He was the only new absence, at least Zane Wood on defense has been out for a while too. But I'm just not sure Vanderbilt can hang in the game long enough without Auburn nonsense. And I don't know if you really want to just go into this game and then have, if you're on an Auburn side, hope they don't throw an interception, fumble the ball into the end zone. And on Vandy, hope that they don't do that because it's so volatile and we've seen it play out both ways this year. Unfortunately for me, I've been on the wrong end of every single one. I guess the only thing for, like betting an Auburn side, if that's where you look, Pavia has been so good. So that does concern me a little bit. 2 turnover-worthy plays. He has 3 picks on the year. He runs the ball extremely well, over 4 yards per carry. All of his underlying efficiency stuff is towards the top of the country, which is crazy to me because he's not working with anything around him. Like a converted quarterback and Stowers is your best receiver and he's a tight end. Your offensive line is terrible, 120th in pass blocking, 104th in run blocking. But somehow Pavia has been able to get it done. The offense is gimmicky. I can't remember what coach said this, but one of the SEC guys called them it's like an Armed Force Academy, said you're basically playing Navy or something. I think it was Hugh Freeze. But that is something that's hard to prepare for in a way this team has been able to kind of gimmick their way into games. They play slow. They're 129th in pace. I don't know. It's kind of greasy. Honestly, I could be talked into this either way. I want to see how these injuries shake out, but if it goes in Vandy's favor, I can consider myself playing them, see it maybe, and same thing with Auburn. This is a pretty even game in my opinion.
Another game kind of similar to this, we shift to the Big Ten, is Minnesota and Illinois. I'll be honest, when I saw the line, I was a little surprised that Minnesota was favorite. Illinois got 2 losses, but to teams they should lose to. But, crushed by Oregon. Fought pretty hard against Penn State, in all honesty. Is there stylistic matchups? Is it personnel? Or do we just think that Minnesota is simply better?
Yeah, I think this was probably eye-opening to a lot of people that don't run any sort of metrics or anything like that. But Illinois has been running hotter than the sun really all year in a lot of different areas. Just in overall power rankings, I have them 61st. Like, this team has been extremely fortunate. The turnovers, especially, and some of them finally started to bite Altmaier. He's 11 turnover-worthy plays, only 3 picks. That ratio was even more in his favor heading into last week's game. I was kind of kicking myself for not betting Oregon. Just a missed opportunity, especially with Illinois having to travel. But Minnesota does a lot of the same things that Auburn does, which are very frustrating. I mean, I bet Minnesota multiple times this year, and they've done something stupid. Like in the North Carolina game, they lost outright despite missing 2 field goals. Then I bet Nevada in a game where, I mean, that was probably one I shouldn't have. They win 27-0, Minnesota, that is. But then played a super close game to Michigan. They beat USC, beat UCLA, took care of business there. The UCLA game was probably closer than it should have been. Absolutely demolished Maryland. There's nothing really to say about that. Maryland's the worst team in this conference. But I don't know. Underlying this, the defense has been pretty good for this team. And some of it isn't even like, I think their coaching staff has gotten in the way at times. They've had a lot of injuries in the secondary, which have forced them to play younger players. They have this absolutely elite recruit, Coy Parrish, and every time he gets on the field, he just absolutely balls out. And then Minnesota will take him and put him back on the bench as soon as someone comes back from injury. But it looks like they're starting to play him in a full-time role, and this kid is awesome. It's helped Minnesota. They're 9th in coverage this year, which I thought was going to be their weakness heading into the season. They're pretty strong up front, 28th in run defense. That's where they returned a lot of players, but getting a player like that in the secondary is huge. Illinois' offense is a huge concern. They have some injuries. Pat Bryant's in concussion protocol. Caden Fagan's out for the year at running back. And on defense, Torrey Cox is in concussion protocol. He barely played against Oregon at corner. I don't know who's going to play out of that. Who knows? It's a week rest. Usually guys miss a game. But their offensive line's 102nd in pass blocking, 86 in run blocking. Altmaier's constantly under pressure. This team can't run the ball at least effectively for a whole game. If you don't have one of your stud receivers in Bryant, you're basically looking at just Sakari Franklin. It's a limited offense against a good Minnesota defense. Brosmer, I have to give him some flowers. This guy was horrific in the beginning of the year, and he's starting to get better. His completion percentage is nearly 70%. He's like locked on to Daniel Jackson, who's been hyper efficient for this team. 7.3 yards per attempt, 12 touchdowns, 4 picks, only 5 turnover-worthy plays. He's running kind of bad there. Good O-line, top 50 unit in the country with a good defense to back it up. I'm interested in Minnesota. I mean, I don't know. Talk me off the ledge. Am I crazy here?
No, so it's funny. I'm definitely not the one to do that. I was talking about this game in Discord, and I started, and this happens, and I actually feel pretty good about the process. I started this week thinking about betting Illinois, and I have gotten further and further and further away from doing that to the point where now I'm seriously I just told you this before the show, I'm considering betting Minnesota, and it's what you mentioned. The underlying metrics are just not good for Illinois. They're really not. And so I really worry about that. And, you know, I got caught against Minnesota buying teams that I thought could, particularly USC, could really expose them in the secondary because they hadn't been tested. They were playing just no real quarterbacks. It turned out their secondary actually was strong, as you mentioned. I feel pretty good about it. There's a 2.5 out there. I think that's actually playable.
I think it is too. And man, I was with you on some of those games, and it wasn't just that they hadn't been tested. They were hurt. Like Wally missed some time for this team. And I just didn't expect Coy Parrish, their 4-star freshman, to come in and be an absolute wagon immediately. He has like no blips on the radar at all. He's just been a wagon back there. So yeah, I'm with you. I might take a 2.5.
Yeah, you have to let extra juice, but there is 2.5 out there. Now it all falls apart because we got to talk about the Big 12, which just all these teams shouldn't be teams. Baylor did help me last week. On Saturday, I had a multi-unit play, which I don't do a lot, on the over with them in Oklahoma State, and the game got out of control. Now they've got a greasy game against TCU in Waco. I can't get a read on TCU. I'm more on the Baylor side of this, but what do you see when you look at these teams?
Baylor's a hard team for me to evaluate. Do you remember, I don't know, 3 years ago, who was that bozo that Utah started over Cam Rising? You remember what I'm talking about? and then they lost a couple games, and then Rising came in, and I think they won out the rest of the way.
Jack Tuttle.
I don't think he ever actually played for Utah. I think he just left.
No.
Anyway,
maybe Bohannon? No.
I can't remember. I'll look it up during
I'll
one of the
find
breaks,
it.
during one of the breaks of the show.
Why is that related? It's a Baylor transfer?
No, it's a parallel to Baylor this year because Baylor has some really bad efficiency metrics, but I think their whole team is skewed by starting DeQuan Finn for the first 3 games because I'm not kidding, if you were to take all 134 starters in the country, he might be ahead of like Davis Bryson and a couple others. Like DeQuan Finn has some of the absolute worst numbers I've ever seen in my whole life. And just going to Sawyer Robertson, who's nothing special. Did you find it?
Yeah, Charlie Brewer.
That's who it was.
Yeah. And he was a Baylor guy.
Yeah, he was. You were right.
Yeah.
This situation reminds me of that, where I'm just having some trouble coming at this from an analytical perspective because you have a couple games of DeQuan Finn just, I don't know, playing like an FCS QB, and it just completely skews everything. And since then, Baylor's actually been pretty good when you isolate their most recent games. Some of them not against the best teams, but Oklahoma State, they took care of business there. They beat Texas Tech, who is really hard to evaluate themselves with their injuries. I thought they looked pretty good against Iowa State. They end up losing, but that's just going to happen. They're probably the best team in the conference right now. And before that, they have a bunch of like weird, greasy games where they started DeQuan Finn. They actually did have a 65% post-game win expectancy against Colorado, which is aged particularly well. So I like this Baylor team. I'm just not sure how much and if it's worth taking against the spread. TCU has been a huge disappointment. This team is an awful offensive line. They're 102nd in pass blocking. Their run game has been atrocious. They've kind of moved Savion Williams, one of their starting receivers, into like this Deebo Samuel role. He's leading the team in carries over the last 2 weeks, which is unbelievable. But this team has some defensive concerns. They're 116th in pass rush. They don't get after the quarterback. I think the strength of Baylor's team on offense is still that O-line, even though it's just basically an average unit. And Sawyer Robertson's actually giving them something on the ground. They've also been hurt a lot at running back. They're getting some decent play out of guys like Pendergrass and Richardson when he's healthy. But man, this is a tough matchup. I had some interest in the over till I saw the number. Pace is really good. TCU's 15th, Baylor's 13th. The Baylor defense, I guess, is the biggest concern I have with the current edition of this team. They're still 114th, 124th in coverage. That's a disaster against Hoover. When TCU does run, Baylor's 85th in run defense. So it's probably more of just a neutral matchup. And then Baylor also doesn't rush the passer. So I'm a little concerned with this Baylor defense going up against Hoover. But yeah, I think Baylor's the more talented team currently. I'm just not sure I can lay the number.
Yeah, there's the 3 at -108 that's staring me in the face. This could end up on my card. I'm closer to betting Baylor than I think most are. It's definitely Baylor or pass for me.
Do you think it gets to 2.5? I think it might.
It might. I mean, TCU's pushing a little right now. If it gets to 2.5, it's going to be hard for me to stay away because I think Baylor is simply the better team.
How did they go through camp and decide DeQuan Finn should be the starter?
I don't know. I will say, and maybe I thought DeQuan Finn could have been really good there, and he just wasn't.
Yeah, you see this sometimes,
especially
with guys that are coming up. Sometimes you hit the lotto and you get Cam Ward. Sometimes you get guys that can't even get on the field. And it appears DeQuan Finn was the latter, unfortunately.
Yeah, didn't work. Simple as that. All right, moving parallel. This is a game I do have some interest in. Arizona State and Oklahoma State. The Sun Devils have taken some money. I'm kind of on their side in this game. I really don't like Oklahoma State. You mentioned a defense that doesn't know what's going on. They got to be at the top of that list. What is your breakdown of these, again, middling Big 12 teams?
I bet Arizona State with the anticipation that Levitt would play. And it appears he's going to. Quote I think most recently was, is he going to play? I saw a 60.
Well, the line is reacting like he's going to play.
Yeah, they came out and said he's like at least 60-40 to play, if not better. He's been in practice. So I'm feeling pretty good about this overall. I took a -1. Obviously, that's moved, but I think Levitt clearly worth the points in the market. Now up to like a 3. You might be able to find a 2.5. Is that out there?
Let's see. I didn't see a 2.5.
I'm seeing
No,
some threes that are juiced Oklahoma State's way. That's why I was just asking.
there's a 3 at -107, 3 at -105. So I have a feeling you might get a 2.5 pop up somewhere.
I think so too. But yeah, this is all just Levitt, that line movement. I think overall Arizona State's the significantly better team. They have some similar like trickiness to the evaluation as a team like Baylor, but theirs is also, I think, towards the positive end. They had so many starters just out on their defense at the beginning of the year. And this is like by far the team is the healthiest they've been all season long. Only have Cole Martin at safety listed as a main contributor who's not going to play in this game. They also have a guard, Cade Briggs, who missed their last contest. He might return. So you have a fully healthy Arizona State team who's now climbing in defensive metrics. They're still 91st, but again, you have like a 4-game sample where they were far from healthy. And you're facing Oklahoma State. Their strength is their offensive line. They still haven't been able to really do anything with that. Their run game is bad. They're 107th in running efficiency. I honestly am flabbergasted how bad Ollie Gordon's been this year. He kind of got it going a little bit last week, but they started to shake up their offensive line in the last contest, and they didn't have their left tackle, Dalton Cooper, so perhaps that's why. But, I mean, this unit is starting to show some cracks, and even when he's been kept just clean, Alan Bowman has been a mess. He has 10 turnover-worthy plays. He has run poorly. All of them have been converted to interceptions, exactly 10-10, but completing only 60% of his passes. That's gotten worse as we've gotten into conference play. They haven't won a game in conference. They just beat up on non-con, so you can kind of see the level of competition has changed. But yeah, I mean, this team hasn't been able to move the ball. Bowman's been a disaster. Their defense is an absolute sieve. They're 125th overall, outside the top 100 everywhere. I don't think Arizona State has a ceiling to like win this conference anytime soon, but this is a quality team with a good offensive line. They're 23rd in pass blocking. Levitt is limited as a passer, but I guess the biggest difference between him and Bowman, Levitt only has 2 turnover-worthy plays. So this is more of definitely a run-heavy offense with Scatabo, and then Levitt delivering the ball to receivers when he has to and not putting it into the defense's hands, which is just huge for this team. No volatility. So I like Arizona State even at the current number. I think this is completely fine. They've taken care of business against a lot of good QBs. Held Sorsby to 6.6 yards per carry, Morton to 4.6. The only one who shockingly got them recently was Jalen Daniels. They even did a good job against Cam Rising, although he was hurt pretty early into that game.
Listen, I'm with you. Keep an eye out for that number. Perpetual short of Oklahoma State around these parts.
Hey, we cashed our under already.
Yeah, there's been some. They've been actually pretty good to me because I've been hitting their overs in the game, and we successfully shorted them in the year. Georgia Southern and South Alabama. Now we're getting serious. When I mean serious, I mean, this is going to be greasy. Last time I saw Georgia Southern, I believe, was them getting absolutely steamrolled by Old Dominion. I don't even remember the last time I've seen South Alabama. I know I bet them pretty recently. I don't even remember what the game was. I'll look it up in a second. 6-point spread. Jaguars at home. What's the word?
Was that the App State game you bet?
No, well, I did bet that game, but I'm talking about
more recently.
Yeah, it was. I'll tell you in a second. It wasn't. I bet them against. Oh, I know what it was. Yeah, I bet them against Troy, and the line moved literally 5 points against me, but I still covered. It just sums up this college football year in a nutshell. If you were on the other side, but yeah, go ahead. What's up with Georgia Southern? Just a weird year for them.
Really weird year. I think they're making a huge mistake at quarterback, and they've been making this for a while. But I got a lot of these are just requests, and I think most of it's for injury information. So I'll start there. Jalen White got banged up in their last game, so watch his status. He played, but he didn't play his normal allotment of snaps, and he was in and out of the lineup. They had a lot of injuries on defense. All these players either played limited snaps, got hurt in the game, or missed entirely. Justin Rhodes at defensive tackle, Chance Gamble at corner, TJ Smith at safety, Tyrell Davis at safety. Those latter guys at the defensive backs all missed the game. So they're coming from a place of injury. South Alabama only has their linebacker, Gavin Forsha, on the injury report. He missed their last game. He's the only one. And then you have the quarterback problems with Georgia Southern. I'm not sure why they continue to stick with J.C. French. He's been awful for this team. And he's a lot of the reason they've been in volatile games recently. 64% completion, just shy of 7 yards per attempt. He has 6 interceptions this year, but he has 16 turnover-worthy plays. He's top 5 in the country in turnover-worthy plays, and he's honestly running pretty hot on those. He should have more interceptions than he has. And even with, I guess, the luckiness to his game, they're still playing really volatile games. You can see, like, when the interceptions don't get caught by the defenders, they can beat a team like James Madison. When they do, they lose to Old Dominion. They get absolutely pounded. So this team is kind of all over the board. I will say, just looking at their box scores, they look pretty good right now. I mean, their losses are Boise, Ole Miss, and then the Old Dominion game. But I still think this is a team I want to short long-term. The biggest hesitation I have is if they move to Dexter Williams, who's an Indiana transfer. He's quietly been awesome in the very brief time we've seen him. And they have a good skill position group around this. Their offensive line is solid. They're 20th in pass blocking. Receivers are solid for this team. It's an air raid offense. So if they ever made a QB change, I would be hesitant here. On the other side, South Alabama, they've also been up and down, but I think this team is honestly a little more consistent. They had losses to Arkansas State, LSU, Ohio in a game where their starter didn't play, and then North Texas. I think all those, for the most part, are pretty excusable, especially when you consider the Gio Lopez absence against Ohio. But he's a quarterback who's also run hot on turnover-worthy plays. He has 7 of them, only 1 pick. He just has overall better efficiency metrics. He runs the ball really well. This defense is 73rd. Georgia Southern's is 79th. We're talking about 2 very middling defenses. And honestly, both defenses are weak where the opponent is strong. South Alabama 107th or 91st in coverage, excuse me. They're facing an air raid. South Alabama 113th, or excuse me, Georgia Southern 90th in run defense. South Alabama wants to run the ball on you. So I guess that's a concern. This is a pretty greasy game. I would have a lot of interest in Georgia Southern if they would do something at quarterback just a little bit differently. But I mean, if JC French is out there, you're live for pick sixes and all kinds of nonsense.
You are. Yes, you are. And that I don't think that's going to change, to be honest. But
I don't know why they are just so stubborn with him. They have options.
They do have options. That's the thing. You mentioned Dexter Williams. Yeah, it's not.
He played at Indiana too. He tore his ACL. That's why he fell out of favor. It's not anything he did on the field that was bad.
Oh boy. All right. We got plenty more games to go, but listen up. First of all, welcome. If you're just joining the stream for the first time, you like this channel, please subscribe. Hit the like button no matter what. It really helps us out. We enjoy doing Betting You. It's one of my favorite shows of the entire week. You guys supporting it means the world. And to go the other way, if you are looking to get more involved, you know about our Discords. Both me and Matt have one where we're dropping plays, we're talking through advice, fun community, and all that. Whether you're currently in there, thinking about getting in there, have never even heard of this, if you want to come in for a month, or months plural, it's super simple. Go to the link in the description below that says Get Tails for free. You can also just go right on Odd Chopper screen. You're going to be taken to this page. It's very simple. It's a page with listed offers from all different books. Not only are you going to get the deals, 5 into 250, 5 into 200, first bet up to 1,000, whatever you want. If you claim these offers and then you email us, you can claim 1, you can claim 5. It does not matter. You will get a month per claim. So if you claim 2 of these, you can get 1 month of each of our communities for free. No questions asked. You get 2 months of somebody, whatever you want. It's fantastic. So many people have already done this, but honestly, normally I say if you've already done it, you can't. You can keep doing it. You can claim them all if you want. You'd have a year free. It's that simple. So follow these steps. But man, not only are you getting the bonus bets, you're also getting a free month of any Tails package you want for a full month. Good stuff. We'll see you in there. Now, how did this game get on here? I hope whoever requested this is a real sicko. I like that. Colorado State and Nevada. I haven't thought about Nevada in months. Colorado State, Mr. Horton, I believe, is gone for the year. Correct me if I'm wrong. 2-point spread. What is the status of this game?
Yeah, he's done for the year. Feel free to skip around this list. They were all requests.
No, I like to get – this is real wild, though.
It is real wild. But if there's any you really want to talk about, don't let me –
We're talking about UMass. Don't worry. That's all I care about.
Are we talking – I have UMass ready to go. We can talk about UMass.
Ooh, we're talking about UMass.
Good SEC tilt for them. You're right on Horton. He is out for the year. Other injuries, Dylan Goffney hasn't been playing at receiver. Peter Montini at tight end. They have one of their rotational safeties, Jalen Gardner. He's been missing time. On Nevada, I think the big hesitation is Brendan Lewis missed their last game. There's pretty optimistic reports out there that he'll play in this game, but he's not the only injury. Sean Dollars, Savion Red have both been banged up at running back. Jace Henry hasn't played in quite a long time. Caden Johnson got hurt in the game. He's an edge for Nevada. He was on crutches. And Tongiaika Malatilona at linebacker also missed. Not sure on that name, but overall, even without Horton, I think Colorado State's the better team here. Don't like taking them on the road. But this offense has changed pretty drastically. The air raid team we knew and loved last year is now throwing the ball just 43% of the time. Honestly, that makes a lot of sense to me. And great awareness by Norvell, considering how bad Braden Fowler-Nicolosi has been and the regression he's experienced this year. What happened to him?
I bet him against Texas in week 0 or 1. And I thought, okay, obviously Texas is an elite team, but they'll move the ball. And it's just been bad after bad after bad performance.
Yeah, he's awful. He is.
I can't believe it.
But fortunately for them, and again, great awareness by Norvell. He seems to get it where a lot of coaches don't. Looking at you, New Mexico State. But their O-line's been awesome. 18th in pass blocking, 12th in run blocking. So they've just been running the piss out of the ball. And it makes a lot of sense. You go to Nevada, that team is 130th in run defense. Their strength is their secondary. They're 43rd in coverage. This is just a horrible matchup for them against a Colorado State team. And I'm not sure people are fully aware of the philosophy change that this team has made. On the other side, getting Lewis back, I'm not sure if this is a huge upgrade or downgrade for this team. Chuba Purdy, who's a Nebraska transfer, quality backup, he had a pretty good account of himself in the last game. 0 turnover-worthy plays. They did use a little bit of A.J. Bianco, too. I don't know why they did that. He played terribly, but Purdy was fine when he was out there. So I think Lewis will be back anyway, and he's not dynamic, but he does a pretty good job taking care of the ball, 5.3 yards per carry, so he's good with his legs. Their line is fairly decent, too. They're top 40 in both pass blocking and run blocking. The problem is Colorado State's also been solid on defense. They're 43rd there overall, and they don't really have a weakness anywhere. They do have a strength. It's run defense, 23rd overall. So it's a bad matchup for Nevada on both sides of the ball. They're running into the strength of Colorado State's defense. Colorado State is running into the weakness of Nevada's defense. It's a Colorado State or pass for me.
Yeah, I hear that. I do like that their coach has reacted to something that I didn't see coming at the beginning of the year. All right, here we go. UMass is back. Don't change the station. Don't go anywhere. 19-point underdog to Mississippi State. The good news, if UMass was going to somehow beat an SEC opponent, it's pretty clear that it would be Mississippi State. The better news, UMass just pounded a team by 28 points. The bad news was that team was Wagner, who I truly didn't know played football. This is a mess. Maybe my thought was a greasy over, but what do you see, if anything, here?
This has actually moved a lot. I was looking at this in the beginning. It was at 17 to begin. I'm upset with myself for not taking that number. Just a very different level of competition for these two teams. I'll start with injuries. UMass, Anthony Simpson, one of their better receivers, has been out. Ryan Mosesso at tackle. Etinosa Rubin at defensive tackle. He's a Georgia Tech transfer, if I'm not mistaken. Jalen Harrell at safety, and then their rotational linebacker, kind of their linebacker 3, Darian Craig, have been out. Mississippi State is battered. They didn't even have Mario Craver in their last game, their 4-star freshman receiver. Obviously, they had to make the QB change. Their defense is decimated. Kedrick Billings-Jones at defensive tackle, Calvin Dinkins defensive tackle, Trey Wright at corner, Chris Keys at corner, DeMontre Russell on the edge, Trevion Williams, a defensive line depth piece, which matters because of all the guys out in front of him. But at the same time, it's just you're playing an SEC team. So I'm not sure if UMass can really stand up in this game. We've seen UMass step up in competition a couple times this year. Missouri battered them 45-3. It's not really a strong Missouri team. They got beat by 14 in Northern Illinois. They did play Miami, Ohio to overtime. I actually think this UMass team is a little bit underrated, but they've gotten themselves in plenty of trouble this year. Fomashon does have 10 turnover-worthy plays, 5 interceptions, so about the average ratio. The O-line is bad. So I'm just nervous about SEC talent going up against a team with weaknesses like this. Now that it's 19, I'm somewhat considering like alt stuff instead of just the spread. Like really get paid off if this goes that way.
Any feel on 60?
How much do you think Mississippi State can do on their own?
I think a pretty healthy amount.
They're 7th in pace.
It just feels like a game of, I don't know. I mean,
so they gave up 43 points to Missouri, who didn't try.
Yeah.
Can UMass get more than 3?
I think UMass is going to score. UMass to give you 17 here.
You think so?
I do.
If UMass gives you 17, I think you should take it over.
I mean, the implied total on UMass is pretty high.
It's 21, 20-ish, 20, somewhere in that range. Sorry, can't do math. 20?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, 20. If it's 21 at 18, that's 30 to 39. Yeah, it'd be exactly that. 39-21.
That's wild. UMass implied for 20 points against an SEC team. What a world we live in. Kind of makes me like an under.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do it like that, just go under on UMass's team total, because you don't. I do think there's equity that it's like 55-7. That could.
I wouldn't. Happen. I'll say this: I wouldn't take that till Saturday morning. Mississippi State is really, really hurt, and I don't know if this is the end of that list. Just considering the opponent they're playing, and they're not done with SEC play.
Kansas State and Houston. I watched the end of Kansas State last week in their rivalry game. Made the plays when they had to. It's still kind of a shaky team. You get kind of a reprieve here because Houston is really kind of in the dumpster, and you see the spread 13.5. Any chance of an upset here, or is this just Kansas State kind of slowly wearing them down?
I don't think there's much chance of an upset. I'll say this: Houston has played better. They just beat Utah, which maybe isn't saying all that much, but the TCU game, they seem to have gotten it together a little bit, at least better than, I don't know, the first month of the season. They were shut out twice in consecutive games to Cincinnati and Iowa State. And I like their coach, so I think maybe they've gotten something out of the roster, but they're still playing at such a huge deficit here. And making matters worse, I don't have a single player on Kansas among their starters flagged for injury. There's a ton of them on Houston. Some players who have been out for the year, like Corey Platt, but then Juwan Gaston at safety missed their last game. Dakota White, Caden Bowie, they've been out on the offensive line. Marquise Shoulders is out for the year. Parker Jenkins, a running back, missed, so they played a freshman there. It's just a messy team. They've switched QBs. Donovan Smith was terrible, but Zion Chris has not been better. The only thing that really changed there was the rushing ability. Chris is a better runner. But 5 turnover-worthy plays, 1 big-time throw. That's not very different from what Donovan Smith was giving you. He was well into the negatives with that ratio. Their O-line, this is weird. They're 25th in pass blocking, 118th in run blocking, but still allowing a 35.5% pressure rate. I think that's mostly on the QBs, just holding the ball too long. The defense is 103rd. I mean, this team is an absolute mess. There are things I want to exploit with Kansas State, and probably we'll just have to wait till future matchups. They're 95th in total defense. They're 90th in coverage. Problem is, I don't think Houston can throw on you. They've been shaking up their offensive line a little bit at times this year. They're allowing a 30% pressure rate. Avery Johnson is inconsistent at quarterback. I think he's fine, especially when he runs the ball. But he's not a guy who's like devoid of turnover-worthy plays. He'll definitely put it in harm's way. They have an excellent run game, that needs to be said. They might just ram it down Houston's throat, to be honest with you. Take the ball out of his hands. That's
what I think. Personally.
Pound the rock. Yeah, that's probably what they do. Houston's 96th in run defense. I guess it's Kansas State or pass.
I think this play is pretty close to the spread. I think Kansas State wins by anywhere from 10 to 20 points in a low variance game. My read on this game immediately was that Kansas State will employ a low variance strategy and just grind them up on the ground, limit turnovers, limit big plays, and just get out of there.
They have shown a pretty explosive offense of late. Since the BYU game, which was weird and turnover prone, they haven't scored any fewer than 29 points.
We'll say they're
at
just
least
kind of
like
lurking.
What's that?
Yeah, I mean, Kansas State is just kind of like, I don't know. They're just sitting there.
What do you think about like their team total over or something like that? It should be around 30 points.
How's the pace?
Pace is really bad.
That's my biggest concern, but yeah.
But it's not like it's been good in these other games, like against Kansas, West Virginia, Colorado plays fast, but like 45 against West Virginia, they don't play fast. And then like Kansas doesn't play fast. You're right, though. That should be a hesitation.
I think Kansas State might make the playoff, honestly.
Right now, I think it is between them and Iowa State.
Yeah. They have to go there.
Are we discounting BYU too much?
No, BYU. I mean, BYU's going to end up winning the national championship, and they're going to be like the 36th best team.
Who does BYU? We need to look at this quick. Who does BYU have the rest of the way?
Nobody.
No way. Really?
Utah, Kansas, Houston, and Arizona State.
Okay, they're at least going to be tested against Kansas and Arizona State.
I think they're going to lose to Arizona State on the road.
I wouldn't be so. Kansas is a good team for everything stupid they've done. All right, I'm looking up Iowa State's. Who do they play?
Iowa State has Kansas State in Ames on the last game of the year.
Okay, that's going to be huge.
Wouldn't
that suck if this is like the elimination game for the right to face BYU?
Yep, that's what it's going to be.
That stinks.
Be that. Yeah,
we should maybe look at some playoff stuff because the winner's getting in. If BYU has this path and these teams have to play each other, Iowa State also plays Cincinnati and Kansas. This is not an easy schedule.
Definitely not. All right, we got a couple more here. Again, if there are anything that we didn't get to, I already mentioned how to get involved. Our links to our Discord are there. Matt_Gajeski on Twitter, @JazzRazBets as well. We just, like I said, we're involved with the community. We want to help you guys as much as we can with the information. UCLA and Nebraska. I don't know if I want to help with this game because this is just credit to Nebraska. They represented themselves really, really nicely in the shoe. UCLA, I can't figure out at all. My first glance here was like Nebraska. It's inside a touchdown, but what do you make of this?
I'm not sure. I wanted an under, but it came down so far. Both these teams are slow as hell. UCLA is 122nd. Nebraska is 104th. Both teams are really predictable too. UCLA just won't run the ball. They haven't had any success. So I guess you can't really blame them that much. Nebraska's defense is strong. They're good in coverage. The biggest thing is Tommy Hill missed their last game, and he's been in and out of the lineup recently. He's their best corner. So that gives me some pause. I don't know if Garbers and company can really exploit that. Garbers has played a little better of late, which I guess should be noted, but the offensive line is terrible. They can't run the ball. They've turned to Berger, who's awful. He's on his third Big Ten school. He's never been good anywhere. Receivers are a mess for this team. Rico Flores missed their last game. They're down 2 starting offensive linemen. They have tons of injuries on defense. Gary Smith, Keanu Williams, Jacob Busick, Ali Cajo, so many players out there. I don't know if I can bet Nebraska right now. Dylan Raiola has been horrifying. Terrible. He hasn't thrown a touchdown since Purdue in week 5. His last 3 games, he has no touchdowns, 5 picks, 2 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays. The only thing that redeemed him was that long run he had against last week. He has been downright horrifying. He's a freshman, so some excuse there, I guess. I don't know, man. Since conference play started, he has been an absolute mess back there. Can't run the ball. Even with that long run he had, he still has negative 58 rushing yards this year. And some of it's not his fault. Their O-line is super hurt. It was hurt even coming into the year. Somehow they've played even slightly above average, but Raiola has no feel in the pocket. I don't know, man. This team, I don't think I can bet this game with how messy Nebraska's been.
What about Virginia Tech and Syracuse? I can't bet Syracuse games, but when I did check in with them last week, Mr. McCord, what the hell was going on? I mean, he was just throwing many turnovers. They all got seemingly converted to touchdowns. I think that Virginia Tech is going to factor in the ACC. whether it's spoiler or just a miracle run, they're playing much better. 4 points on the road. Tough spot. What do you think here?
Yeah, I mean, both these teams have been pretty disappointing this year, especially Virginia Tech, I guess, considering their expectations. The only guy who's really hurt on their team is Jalen Stroman. He hasn't played since week 1 at safety. Syracuse has more injuries. Defensive tackles, Deion Wilson and Kevin Jobity have been out. Marcellus Barnes, who's a depth corner, has been out. Same thing with Barry Buxton at safety. Haven't had Zeed Haynes. But yeah, you mentioned it. The McCord game was really weird. Not only do you rarely have that many interceptions, but rarely do you have that many get turned into pick sixes. With him, 3 of those interceptions were tip balls. He still had 4 turnover-worthy plays. Not all of them were the interceptions, which is pretty wild. You know, the guy has 5 interceptions. 3 of them are tips, some not his fault, but then he goes out and has more turnover-worthy plays, some were dropped. So, I mean, depending on the variance, that could have been even worse for him. But I still think he ran a little bad with all them getting converted to touchdowns, basically. He has 15 turnover-worthy plays. When you adjust for just raw pass attempts, his turnover-worthy play rate's not as high as you might think, just because this team is full air raid. He's throwing the ball a ton. But yeah, I mean, that was a really concerning performance. Overall, his full body work is pretty good. The offensive line is decent for this team. They're slightly above average. They have good skill position players. Gadsden will be back in this game. He exited early with an injury. And you still have a bunch of good receivers. Pena played in the game. So I don't know. I think they'll strain this Virginia Tech defense, who's 107th in coverage. Their real strength has been their pass rush, and they've been decent up front. With that said, they've still allowed a lot of production, and their good stats are kind of bolstered by playing Georgia Tech's backup QB, Stanford's backup QB. Like, this is a team that had Tom Castellanos at 8 yards per attempt, Turbo Richards at 7.1 yards per carry, Ethan Kaliak-Manis, 10.8 yards per attempt. I mean, there are some really, really concerning metrics against the good teams this team has faced. And then all their good metrics overall are just against the awful teams like Stone Earl. I don't know, man. Like whoever Quinn Heineckel, who's a backup quarterback. I don't know, man. They just have so many blips on the radar where I don't think I could bet them. But can you really go out and bet Syracuse after that last performance? Their defense hasn't been that great either. They're 67th overall. They're more balanced around the average mark. They don't have like a clear weakness. But yeah, man, I guess it's Syracuse or pass, but I'm probably just passing after that McCord game. That was awful.
Awful indeed. Macro buy on Virginia Tech. I don't love the spot. And again, didn't really break down the game a ton. It's flat 4 everywhere. We'll see. I think I'm waiting for Virginia Tech and Clemson to square up. I want to see that game.
Where is that one?
It's in Blacksburg.
Oh, that's a tough place to play. This one's in Syracuse, which also is just like a weird place to play.
I think it's in Blacksburg. Let me just before I
have you been to Syracuse's stadium?
I have.
Is it nice?
Yeah, it's so actually. All right, yeah, it is in Blacksburg, and I've been to the Dome to watch. I have never seen a football game. I watched Villanova play basketball there, which was a sick game, but. Yeah, it's all right. It's a weird place. It's the old Carrier Dome. Yeah, it's nice. It's not my favorite place to watch a game, to be honest. You ever been to Syracuse?
I've never been to Syracuse.
It's cloudy is the number one word that comes to mind.
I think I have some relatives that live there.
It's very gray, which is right in my wheelhouse because I'm a sicko. Like, I don't care about that, but it's just like a very gray city. I don't know. It's hard to describe. Just keep that in mind, friends. If you're going to Syracuse, you certainly don't need sunscreen. It's just always cloudy. All right, Navy and Rice. Oh boy, Navy. The game got away from them. The moment was too big. And talent, talent does matter in the world. This is a lot more reasonable. I don't know though. Rice is a mystery team. 11 points. You have an angle here?
I kind of like Navy on the bounce back after they had 2 turnovers on the year coming into that game and then turning the ball over 6 times. And some of them just like super weird stuff. They muffed a punt. A lot of it was just like Blake Horvath couldn't handle the ball. Like, it was just slipping out of his hands. And they kept mentioning an injury to his non-throwing hand. And I'm just like thinking to myself, what is going on with the throwing hand then? Because I don't know, man. Like there was just weird stuff like that in the game that I don't have an explanation for. They're by far the healthier team. Rice just fired their head coach. Those are always weird situations where, I mean, he got fired for a reason. He was very bad. Does that give the team a boost under the interim, or does the team completely fold? Who knows? But Rice has been dealing with injuries. EJ Warner didn't play in their last game. That I thought might not be a big deal, but Drew DeVilliers was so bad that I think maybe it is. He's 3.6 yards per attempt and a 52.5% completion percentage. But it's not just him. Tight end Broden Grown has been out for a while. They have a ton of injuries on defense. Myron Morrison at linebacker. Play Wyatt at corner. Hasn't played in multiple weeks. Jonathan Jean at corner. Marcus Williams at corner. A lot of those are in the secondary, which normally I would say, who cares against Navy? But Blake Horvath has actually shown the ability to throw the ball. This team has a great offensive line. Their defense has been pretty strong. And when you step down in competition and play teams like Rice, that matters. When you go up and play Notre Dame, there's just such a big talent discrepancy, especially when you're getting Notre Dame short fields. You just can't win like that. But against Rice, I think you actually can. This team is just hurt. They're a mess. They have a coaching change. Their quarterback is so bad. I think it's Navy or pass. I might actually take Navy. This is the most interest I've ever had in Navy this year.
Okay.
To my detriment, of course. They've been slaughtering teams.
They have been. They've been unstoppable, and then they were slaughtered by Notre Dame, which it happens. No doubt about it. All right. This is a game that I got to hear I asked you to look at this game because I'm not understanding something about this game. Tulsa and UAB. It's a 3-point spread, but I'm going to the total. Talk to me about this game because I simply don't understand how they're getting to 57 as a total.
Is it down?
Yeah, I don't understand. I have to be missing something.
I don't think you are. Yeah, I see 58s, but they're heavily juiced towards the under. That's wild.
57 at minus 110 is on my screen.
Yeah, I might have to get into this again. I'm with you on the over. Pace is awesome. You brought this to my attention.
I'm taking this right now. I don't even care.
Tulsa's 31st in pace. UAB's 26th. I mean, maybe it's coming down because both teams have quarterback problems. Jalen Kitten is going to start for UAB. He hasn't been that bad. 54.5% completion, 6.4 yards per attempt. I mean, we just talked about a Rice QB who's averaging 3.5 yards per attempt. He is turning the ball over quite a bit. He has 10 turnover-worthy plays in a short time on the field. But does that even really matter? When you turn the ball over like that, all you do is give the opposing offense short fields, and you're playing so fast that you're going to have a lot of those opportunities. I'm not sure what Tulsa's going to do at quarterback. Kirk Francis got benched in their last game for Cooper Lega, our old Utah State friend. And he looked pretty good. 9.3 yards per attempt. He has 6 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays. He can run a little bit. Neither team has a defense. UAB is 133rd. There's only one team that's worse in total defensive efficiency. I'm not sure who it is off the top of my head. And Tulsa is 112th. I don't know, man. Like, this is just horrifying defense versus horrifying defense. Perhaps like a quality QB change for Tulsa, giving them an extra boost. UAB hasn't been good at quarterback, but Kitten is not like the worst quarterback I've ever seen. Plus, like, both these teams are just playing in constant shootouts. Look what their defenses are allowing. I won't go through every metric, but my goodness. Like, in the most recent game for Tulsa, Owen McCown was at 8.7 yards per attempt. Owen McCown is horrible. Horrible. I don't know, man. I don't see this. I don't know why it's coming under.
I can't find out why it's going the other way. The pass defense is atrocious. These quarterbacks are bad, but they're no worse than the absolute Muppets that you just talked about. I don't get it. I simply do not get it. Now, when you're talking about trash teams, stupid stuff can happen. They could drive all the way down and fumble. They could miss field goals. Tulsa's done that to me all year. But I'm just going to trust this read. I'm not going crazy or anything, but pretty
These
simple
teams
over
do
for
both
me.
Really bad kickers. Tulsa's
Awful.
113th. UAB's 110.
Now, I'm hoping, and again, this just speaks to the variance, both of these teams at times have said, you know what, our kickers are so bad, let's just go for it. So you get a lot of like weird results where Tulsa will go for it like 6 times in a game. Just kind of what you have. I saw it against Oklahoma State where they crossed the 50, I think 8 times, and they scored once. It just doesn't, it's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I mean, there are games on this profile for Tulsa, like Temple 20-10. Very next week, they're playing maybe a worse offense than UTSA, 46-45.
Again, range outcomes is huge. But I do like the spot. I'm not gonna lie. One of my favorite bets
UAB has
of the week.
allowed at least 32 points in every game this year.
Yeah. And some of those opponents are insane.
I'm excluding the Alcorn State game, obviously.
That doesn't count.
32 to UL Monroe. Arkansas is going to do what Arkansas does. Navy 41, Tulane 71, Army 44, South Florida with a backup QB 35. Bryce Archie, the guy is I don't know. Bryce Archie's so bad.
Yeah, I don't even know who that is.
He's the backup for USF.
Yeah, good for him. And he's certainly, from what I do know, he's certainly no dual threat. So he had him through the air. They did what they wanted on the ground. Just again, enough said there. Let's go to one more, and then we'll get some best bets. The hell out of here. Old Dominion and App State. It's pretty simple. Is Old Dominion that good?
They're super hard to evaluate because, I mean, like, some of their efficiency metrics are so bad, and these are all rooted in things you can measure. Like, this team is allowing a ton of pressure. Their offensive line is objectively bad. Their quarterback, Colton Joseph, is under pressure on 39% of his dropbacks. He's just been a wizard back there with his mobility. I don't know how he's so good at evading pressure, but he's done an excellent job. He is averaging 7 yards per carry with his O-line doing nothing for him. This team is 125th in pass blocking, 118th in run blocking. All their good players transferred. Their receivers are terrible. This team ranks 122nd in just overall receiving efficiency, which is a metric that tries to separate what the receivers are doing individually from the rest of the team and what the quarterback does. They're horrible there. They have a ton of injuries. Like, their best defender is redshirting. Jason Henderson, it's because of an injury. His replacement, Julian Culbreth, got hurt in the last game. Jamez Drummer, his replacement's been hurt. I just don't know how they keep playing this well and winning games. And it's not even anything that's fluky. You go into their underlying stuff in the box scores. Like, this team outgained Texas State yards per play. That wasn't a fluke. They won that game fair and square. So I don't know, man. This is a really hard team to evaluate. I will say their defense, despite losing, I mean, like, have their defense from last year starting on like Big Ten teams. And now you're still 57th. I mean, this at some time we have to give some props to like Ricky Ronnie, whose team gets pillaged every single year. And this team is always lined at like 2.5 wins. I'm considering the under, and somehow they like make a bowl. I don't know, man. I'm not going to discount them anymore, but I do think App State is a pretty decent buy low. They've run about as poorly as you can. My big concern is Aguilar is a turnover factory right now. 15 turnover-worthy plays for him. Their O-line is still pretty good. So, I mean, I hope at some point they just continue to decrease the pass rate. It's 55% right now. Like, just run the ball behind this O-line. It's not going to be a strength in this game. Old Dominion's been good up front, but Aguilar's been the big concern. On defense, they're 104th. They have a ton of injuries. To briefly talk about that, Marcus Clark, defensive tackle, Daryl Farr at linebacker, DJ Burks at safety, Averian Cole was limited last week at corner, Caden Sullivan at linebacker didn't play full snaps, Kevin Abrams-Verwain, same thing. So, I mean, I don't think Old Dominion's offense is particularly good. It's a one-man show, and he's just being like a Diego Pavia-level wizard. But, I mean, he should find success here. Just, can App State do anything, or does Old Dominion's defense stand tall again? It's going to be a pass until I figure out a better way to evaluate Old Dominion.
Yeah, they're a weird team. Like I said, I caught some of the goodness of them last week against Georgia Southern, but I'm not sure what to make of it. All right, here we go. This is a pretty simple one. I don't have to create anything. It's Halloween, obviously. The best thing to hand out, candy's wildly overrated, really not a fan, would be the kids come to the door, give them a winner or two. Tell them a best bet. So if you get those knocks on the door, what are you going to tell the kids who are dressed up and want a winner today?
I'm going to leave the best one for you, where we are in agreement entirely. Arizona State, I think, is my best bet overall. against Oklahoma State. Don't care about the current number. Think 3 is completely fine. That's basically just pricing in Sam Leavitt. So that is my best bet.
UAB over is where I'm going to be living. I took it on the show over 57. If it, again, if it doesn't get there, it does not get there. But I don't see anything in the read that gives me hesitation. If anything, I think there's just a massive blind spot with how bad those defenses are. So that's a little 2-pack. South Alabama is on my list to look more into because I really don't like what Georgia Southern's doing. I'm going to keep that one in reserve. But there's a 1-2 punch.
Yeah, there's a couple on the list. Minnesota's on the list to look at
Minnesota.
more. Where the injuries shake out in Auburn. I'm with you on South Alabama. I'm interested in Colorado State. I might play some alts in the Mississippi State game. I might play Navy. I might play Navy.
I bet Colorado State last week. Maybe I'll roll them back.
I don't know if there's anything else in the super deep interwebs that I'm looking at a ton.
Let me give it one last scroll here.
What about Memphis UTSA real quick? What do you think on that?
The over. That's what I think.
I think UTSA stinks.
They do. They are no good. It's pushed to 7.
What about our good friends at UCF?
Oh my God.
They fired their DC.
They are just certain.
Okay, how about this? UTEP is -3 and taking money against Middle Tennessee State.
That's real bad.
USA out of principle right now, but holy smokes, I never thought I'd see UTEP favored by a field goal and taking money.
Let me ask you this. I don't know if you caught this, and you would know 100 times more than me on this. I watched the end of the UCF game, and at first I was like, oh, they're going to throw back to Jefferson. And they didn't. They just kept trying new guys. They got to a guy at the end, and I can't tell if it was garbage time. I don't know if he's going to continue to play. UCF had a guy at the end that I've never seen. He looked pretty good.
Was that the Colson guy?
They brought in a new QB late. I'll get you the name in a second. They brought in a new guy. Very possible. And he looked pretty good. He manufactured at least a couple of scores. No, his name is.
I don't think it wasn't Colson. He's
Dylan Rizek. You know who that is?
He's their 4th stringer. He's been on the team for a while. We haven't really ever seen him.
He's only a freshman.
A red shirt, I think. He was there last year. He is a red shirt.
I wonder if he gets the start.
Who knows?
He was good.
I'm going to look at his recruiting profile right now. I don't think he was a high recruit because I don't know him. Jacurri was a good recruit. Colson's a decent recruit. He's a true freshman this year. Rizek, not a good recruit. But that doesn't mean everything.
No, he again, you're like mopping up. But
he was exactly recruit number 1,000 last year.
Well, lucky number 1,000. Everybody knows what's going on there. But I'm telling you, he had something going on. He can move. He was good. He was good in the limited I saw. If they started him, I would have interest in UCF.
Why did they have Colson ahead of him?
I don't know. He came in and he instantly looked like he knew what he was doing.
Rizek?
Yeah, he was good. He moved. He scored on the ground.
I don't know what UCF is doing, man. I kind of think they should just go back to KJ.
They're not doing that, clearly.
What happened with KJ? Why not give him a shot anymore?
They are not. Clearly, they are not because they went to so keep an eye on that. I'm going to dig more into that. And again, friends, that's why we love doing the show. We love hanging out in our communities and Discord. It's just a great time of the year with everything going on. I hope that you guys are a part of it along for the ride. Support, and please let us know if there's anything we can do to make your college football weekend even better. On that note, from me, from Matt, and the entire team here, good luck. Make some money. See you next week.